Hey friends, V here, and welcome to Forever Petals by V's YouTube channel. I'm here to bring you guys my 2025 Dia de los Muertos SVG bundle tutorials. I am so excited to be back with you guys. And this year's designs include the frame. Now, typically I do like a papel picado with like the scalloped edges, but this year it's just more of a frame-like, but you can still make it into a banner. And then you also have some words that you can attach to the frame, or if you want to add some other embellishments as well. You're also going to have the sugar skull. Now, the sugar skull is an 8-layer project. I haven't provided a sugar skull design to you guys since 2023, so I'm really excited about that. And I think this has to be my favorite of this year. And this is the Sacred Heart design that y'all are going to be getting. This is 15 layers of design, and she definitely took quite some time to make, but I'm super excited to show you guys the process to assemble her. Now, before we get started, let's go over the materials I'm going to use to assemble our projects today. Starting off with the Dollar Tree foam squares. These are in the hardware section at your local Dollar Tree, and they work well with these projects. I'm also using the 1/8 of an inch 2mm foam strips from scrapbook.com. I'll put all the details down in the description as well. And of course, my go-to craft glue from Barely Art. It is their precision craft glue. And of course, you can get 10% off on their website by using VPLS10 for your discount. Now, we're going to kick off with the frame. Now, this has 9 layers. You do have a base layer, which is the cream color that you will not see once you put your family's portrait in the middle. And then you also have the top layer, which I always typically do in black. It doesn't have to be black, but just for video purposes, I make the top black. And then you have 7 different colors in between. Now, I'm separating the layers so that way you know which layers need to be glued together before you start using your dimensional foam tape. So the bottom layer, I consider the layer 1, which is the beige. The top layer is considered layer 9 in black because it's the last layer that you put down because it's the top layer. Now, I hope I didn't confuse anyone. So first things first, you want to glue the layer 9, which is the top black layer, on top of layer 8, which is, in my case, red. You do not need to use the same color schemes that I use, but this is just the way the SVG colors are in order. So we're going to glue layer 9 on top of layer 8 using our Barely Art Precision Craft Glue. And you don't want to use too much of this, especially with how dainty the top layer is. Just go ahead and squeeze and drag the glue so that way it kind of creates these little dots all the way around. And you're going to place the layer 9 in black on top of the red layer, which is layer 8. Now, just for reference, you want to make sure the corners are aligned. The actual detail, some of the colors are meant to show through. It doesn't mean that it didn't cut properly. For example, that red on the top little scallop is supposed to show through the black. So next, I'm going to take layer 7 and I'm going to put glue on the back side and place that on top of layer 6. Okay. And again, just be mindful of putting blobs of glue. You just want to be just very quick as well, because Barely Art's craft glue does dry fairly quickly. So I'm just going to lay that on top. And again, I'm making sure that the corners are aligned and letting the color underneath come through. Again, you'll see small little areas where that blue will come through on the purple. And then next, you're going to go ahead and take layer 5 and glue it on top of layer 4. Now, the reason I do this gluing before we start adding the foam strips is because of the amount of detail that each layer has. You want to make sure that you don't put foam strips in between every single layer, because you start to lose the detail as it becomes more dimensional. the shadows begin to kind of take away the colors as the foam starts to be layered up. So that's why there are certain layers that are glued together before you start adding your foam in between, okay? And then lastly, you're gonna take layer 2 and glue it onto layer 1. Now, layer 3, which was yellow, is the only layer that's singular. It does not need to be glued to anything else. It just stays as its own layer, okay? Now, once you have all of your layers glued, then you can go into the existing layers, which would be 5 layers, and you're going to add your foam strips. Now, when it comes to the Dollar Tree foam squares and the scrapbook.com 1/8 of an inch 2mm foam strips, if you're using, and this is just my personal preference, if I'm using the foam squares on the backside, I'm only going to use the foam squares. If I'm using the foam strips, I'm only going to use the foam strips as far as on each layer. I don't want to mix them just because the foam squares are a little bit thicker than the foam strips, and then certain parts of your frame will begin to sink because, you know, the foam strips are smaller or not as thick. So you'll see me here. If I need to cut some small pieces of the foam squares, I'll do that just to fill in any space. But I don't combine by using foam squares and foam strips on one layer. I use one or the other. Now, you're just going to continue this process of adding your foam to the backside of the layers and then stacking them on top of each other. In this layer, I'm using some foam strips, but again, I won't be using foam squares since I am using the foam strips. And you'll just continue to stack them. And you will begin to see how your design creates that shadow effect and somewhat of a little shadow box as well. And in this video, I did not include showing putting the words. Now, your files do include a few words that you can attach to the frame. That's why I left it kind of open at the bottom of the top of the frame. But you can always add your own font. You can add butterflies. You can add a mini marigold if you'd like as well. But I just left that open. And again, I included some words, and all I did was use for the recuérdame, all I did was use the outline. I forgot what it's called. Help me out. Offset. It's called an offset. So I use the offset twice around the words just to help it stand out a little bit. So that is the frame. So now we're going to go ahead and get right into my favorite, which is the Sacred Heart. This entire Sacred Heart project is 15 layers. So it's quite a few layers. Now, I will say with this specific project, the smallest I would recommend cutting the entire project, meaning the size of the very bottom layers is going to be about 5 inches because the detail on these top 5 layers is very intricate. So you want to make sure you don't lose that. So just like the frame, we're actually going to separate the design into stacks or sections. So the top 5 layers, which would be layer 11 through 15 with the cross in them, there's 5 of those. You're going to use the scalloped, teal, pink, and tan heart together, the fire or the flames, and then the bottom 3 layers, which are layer 1, 2, and 3. So of course, starting with the very bottom layer, that's layer 1, the yellow is layer 2, and the red is layer 3. So these 3 layers will be glued together. So I'm going to go ahead and put my Bearly Art Precision Craft Glue on the back side of layer 2. And again, I'm just starting with the little points, the little rays of sunshine, and we're going to just drag those out. Again, you can see I'm just being very not concerned with my glue placement, and then we're just going to kind of wiggle it around. Again, no huge blobs. You just need very little. And I'm going to place layer 2 on top and align it with the rays in black. And you're just going to push down. Now you're going to repeat this step with layer 3, which is the red heart with the rays sticking out of it. And you're going to do the same thing there. Okay. So just make sure that you're adding your glue. You do have to move quickly on this just because the barely arts does dry pretty quickly. And you just, again, want to drag. Doesn't have to be exact or precise. If you have any glue leaking out the bottom, that's okay. It does dry clear and your project will look amazing. Just try not to have like tremendous amount of blobs. Okay. And you'll go ahead and place layer 3 on top of the existing layer 2, layer 1. And just line the little rays with each other. So that is your first set or stack, if you will, that you're gluing together. Now, the next stack is going to be the flames. The flames will be, for the most part, individual, but you're going to have a offset for the orange layer. So the red layer, the very largest flame, is the offset for the orange, meaning you want to place it to where it's centered to that piece, okay? And then the light orange and the yellow are individual stacks, so you don't need to glue those down to anything. So I'm going to take glue to the back side of the orange, and I'm going to place that so that way the red is around as an offset. And it's a very minimal offset, but it's there, okay? And you're essentially done with the flames, okay? So you'll just leave the light orange and the yellow alone, and then we'll move on to the scalloped hearts. Okay, so for these, you're going to take the pink scallop and you're going to put glue on the backside and place it in the center of the turquoise or the teal. The teal is the offset for the pink, meaning the teal should show through the entire outer edge of the pink once the pink is placed on top. And then you'll go ahead and take the beige or tan heart, solid heart, and you're going to place that in the middle of the pink. So that way the pink and teal are little ruffles on the outside of the heart itself. And then you have the final top 5 layers, which are layers 11 through 15. I'm going to start by adding layer 12 on top of layer 11. So the teal on top of the lime green. Again, making sure that you avoid adding glue to where it's going to come through the front. But again, if it happens to slightly come through, you're okay. So then I added layer 13 on top of layer 12. I'm going to layer 14 in yellow, adding that on top of the existing project. And then finally, the top black layer, layer 15, is going to be on going on top of layer 14, or essentially the layers underneath it. Now, once you have all of your layers glued, this is where you're going to start stacking them just like we did before. Now, this time you don't have to use the scrapbook thin strips, the 1/8 strips. You can use the foam squares from the Dollar Tree because there's no intricate areas because all of the back sides of our layers are basically the heart shape. Now, there are some pieces like on the top of the flame where I kind of want to make them skinnier, so I'll just cut some of those foam squares down just a little bit. Now, adding the fire, which is the orange and the red, to our rays, are basically our base. You want to make sure that the flame has that black offset at the top. That's what I use as a guide for this first layering with the foam. Then the light orange, or I guess golden yellow that I use. Again, I'm going in with the foam squares. And I'm going to place this to where it's on top of the orange heart at the bottom. So I'm using the bottom of that heart shape, the little bottom point, as my guide for these 2 yellow pieces. So that way the flames are where they need to be. Because we're going to end up covering that heart with the next layers. So I'm lining the yellow with the bottom of the heart of the light orange and then the dark orange. Now I'm putting foam strips on the teal scallop, which is our next layer. And because the scallops are wider than the actual heart, I just want to make sure that looking at it from this angle, the scallops are covering up where the rays or the spikes come out of the sides of the heart, okay? And then lastly, you're going to go ahead and add your final top layer, and that's with the cross. Again, just breaking down some smaller pieces to fill in into the smaller spaces. And this will go right on top of the beige or tan heart. I feel like this one's a little bit easier with the foam process just because you're using the bigger foam squares rather than the strips. And I'm just gonna do my best to align this, and you have completed your Forever Petals by V Sacred Heart SVG. She is so pretty. And again, you can do any color combinations that you want, guys. Now, I would keep the fire colors the same as fire, but all the other colors you can kind of change around. And last, but certainly not least, is the Sugar Skull design. Now, this is an 8-layer file, and it's just going to be probably the easier of all of the designs this year because we're just gluing every 2 layers together. So layer 1 and 2, layer 3 and 4, layer 5 and 6, and then layer 7 and 8. So I'm starting with layer 8 right here, which is a very top layer. I made my Sugar Skull top layer in a cream color. And we're gluing this on top of layer 7. So again, just be quick and make sure that you're getting any of those open spaces when you're doing the glue process. And just align them. I always use the edges as my guide and let the bottom layer shine through the layer you're adding on top. So we're just going to speed through here, and I'm adding layer 6 on top of layer 5. Then we will have layer 4 on top of layer 3. And then layer 2 on top of layer 1, which is going to be that solid black. Now, when it comes to the glue, if you haven't caught on already, I always work from the top to the bottom. So top layers to the bottom layers when it comes to gluing. But then when I start adding foam strips, I start from the bottom. So I start with the bottom layers working my way up to the top. Okay. So once you have all of your layers glued, you're going to go ahead and start adding your foam. Now, I was running out of my Dollar Tree foam strips, so I had to make sure I had enough just for at least this specific layer. So mine is a little bit more spread out on this one. But again, this foam roll is from the Dollar Tree. Now, there are crafters out there, small business owners, that I have seen sell the foam strips in colors, which I think is super cool, just to kind of match the layers you're working with. So I am going to look some of them up and put them down in the description of the my Etsy, not Etsy. I'm going to put them in the description of this YouTube video, okay? So that way, in case you want to support small business as well, you can find those who are selling the colorful foam squares. So again, this layer, I'm just going in with some foam strips, the thin foam strips, and I'm just making sure to add where there is any empty spaces, okay? And then finally, on the back side of layer 7, I'm adding foam strips. And we're gonna be adding this to the final, as a final top layer. So before this video ends, I do want to say thank you guys for supporting me. It has been one heck of a year, but I'm so glad to be back. And I'm really excited to see all of the projects that you guys create with this year's designs. Don't limit yourself. You can do shadow boxes, garland. You can make magnets. There's just so many things. You can decorate your ofrenda with all of these projects as well. So I'm so glad to be back, guys. I'm glad you're here. Thank you for supporting. You can purchase this entire bundle over in my Etsy shop. Details in the description of this video. Happy Dia de los Muertos 2025, and I will see you guys next time.